G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Walter Hill Jr., who's the former president and CEO of Icon Blue. He's based in Los Angeles, United States. Thanks for your time today, Walter.
Hello.
Let's start with how let's start with how we know each other. Justin from Mozilla Agency reached out, thought you'd be a great guest on, specifically to talk about your most recent book, which, when did that go live?
About 7 months ago.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you want to tell our audience a bit about your former business that you sold a few years ago?
Yes. Yeah. The company was called Icon Blue, and it was a brand marketing firm here in Los Angeles, California, in the U.S. And it was just a wonderful experience of 20 to 22 years, with that company. We started the company with just a couple of employees. For those who are aware of the branded merchandising business, they know that it's the imprinting of corporate brands on products and the placement of those products so that the images and corporate logos can have visibility with target clients. And we did that for years, and people are familiar with it. A t-shirt is a promotional product when it has a logo on it. A coffee mug that we see on various talk shows, they put the coffee mug in the cameras so that the people can see the brand. It's merchandise branding was the business.
Okay, great.
And
how did you start out? Sorry.
Well, I started out, I met a fellow here in Los Angeles. He had a very successful company called Idea Man, and I started working for them. And what I advised in the book that I decided to write, one of the things that I advise people to do is to learn about the business you're going into. Try to learn from someone else's experience.
Definitely.
That's the lowest cost way to be able to do that.
Yep.
So I did work for another company for about 4 or 5 years, and it was a wonderful experience with them. And I was able to learn to identify what I refer to as red flags, which is the book that I ended up writing recently. And the red flagging is basically when you can learn to anticipate in your evaluation of your business and your process, anticipate things, excuse me, that could be a problem issue. And you're able to, if you identify them in advance, then you have that opportunity to rectify it before it happens.
Yeah.
That's not to say that, I tried to write about being able to eliminate all mistakes, but there are certain mistakes. I call them high impact mistakes that you can't afford to make in a business.
Yep, great. Do you have any examples there you can share with the audience?
Well, I think most people are aware of any limited business experience. You become very conscious of a mistake that if it happens, or an action you're taking, if it doesn't go well, it's going to have harm to your business.
Yep.
If I was importing for 20 years, a lot of our merchandise came from China. And if we had, your small business, if I have a $200,000 shipment coming in from China, and the merchandise arrives, and I've branded that merchandise with my client's logo, and the color isn't right, or there's any flaw in a multi-million-dollar corporate logo, the client is not going to accept the products.
Yeah.
that means that I've already paid for goods, that I lose the capital output for paying for the goods. I could possibly lose the customer because I'm trying to deliver faulty goods, and I lose the profit on the order.
Yep.
For any small business can't afford to take that kind of hit. I
Yeah.
call that a high impact mistake.
Mhm.
If it doesn't put you out of business once, if you let that happen several times or more than once, it could, it could be a real detriment to where you're trying to get.
Yeah. So now, with your few decades of experience and having written the book, how would you approach that scenario you've just spoken of, then importing, potentially, say, faulty merchandise in? How would you prevent that from happening, but based on what you talk about in the book?
Well, let me say this: that in the book I wrote about different industries, not just mine.
Yep.
Because I wanted people in a broad spectrum of businesses to be able to learn how to use those instincts to deter that kind of thing from happening. Keep that from happening to you. You don't have to have all the experiences in order to learn. Several things that we do. Red flagging is a mindset. It's something that I taught my staff, and the key members of my staff that bought into it. And then the leaders would pass that information throughout the company, and it became a part of our culture. We prided ourselves for being able to be efficient because we knew that efficiency leads to profit, and profit leads to higher wages, more opportunities for the team,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously a win for the ownership. So what we do is you take a project in segments, in parts, and not only a project for an order, Troy. This can be done with a business, and I will give you an example of a business red flagging as well.
Yep.
We know that we're dealing, whenever we dealt with orders coming from a country where there was a language difference, we anticipate that everybody we talked to there did speak English, but we understood that it was their second language.
Yep.
And as a second language, sometimes the communication things can be misunderstood. It may not be quite clear. And so we take it in steps. The first thing is to make sure that you're communicating clearly.
Mm-hmm.
We red flag the entire project. We make sure the communication is clear so that the understanding is what it should be between us and the manufacturer. Then we use the Ronald Reagan. There's a Ronald Reagan philosophy that you may not be aware of.
I've got to hear this. He was an interesting character, wasn't he?
And he always said, trust but verify.
Yeah.
So we had good suppliers and we did trust them, but we verified. So we had an inspection agency in China that was, if we were producing 200,000 pieces of goods and you had a limited amount of time, you ask what if questions.
Yep.
And the what if question would be, well, what happens if we don't get it to the client on time?
Mm-hmm.
Client would be very, very upset.
Yep.
We're in a highly competitive business. They can go elsewhere very quickly, and we don't want to lose a major customer. So what we do is we have an inspection of the product at 20,000 products, so that if the production isn't going as it should be, we don't want to inspect at 100 to 150,000, because if we find the problem then and have to start over, we're going to miss our ship date.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That is very elementary but basic red flag thinking that unfortunately a lot of companies did not do and ended up having problems.
Yep.
So that's another step in the process. The next thing might be, these are just examples of how you think of things. And this is from experience. This is not something that we it was just created because we could think of it, because our foresight was that great. Some of it was the foresight that we have now would come from past experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had an experience where we had to split ship products to 37 different locations, for example. You have 200,000 products going to 37 different places. Well, that becomes a flag, because you can imagine if all the addresses with the zip codes and all that information isn't 100% accurate when it leaves that factory, and the quantity that's supposed to go to New York goes to Chicago, and the quantity that's supposed to go to Chicago goes to Tennessee.
It's a mess.
You have an incredible amount of time loss and cost in trying to, redirect products from all over the place. So what it does, it erodes your profit margin, and you had to have a competitive price in order to win the business in the first place. Now you're starting to erode your profit margin, and that leads to, that's not a good outcome. That's not the outcome you want. So we anticipate, by red flagging, those things from our experience that could cause pain. And then we take measures, very simple measures, to verify it. For example, we would photograph all the different shipments. We'd have them photograph it before it went out. And we see in the factory here in the United States, and a lot of this is, thank you, God, for technology.
Yep.
Because we're able to sit here and actually view these things. And we could see that and verify that all the addresses and the quantity that was listed on that address was accurate. So we were able to do very complicated projects that required some sophisticated printing, because perhaps some of it had to be printed in English, some of it had to be printed in Spanish. And we were able to verify all those things by anticipating that if that particular part of this project goes wrong, it's going to be a real problem. And you circumvent that by taking measures beforehand.
Yep.
Now, as far as a company is concerned, you can red flag any business. If you're going into the restaurant business, location is very important. Menu for the location is important. And this is not my wisdom. This is Tom Sims, one of the interviewees that I wrote about in the book. There's a chapter in it on restaurants, developing a restaurant. Mm-hmm. Tom Sims is one of the more successful restaurant owners. He owns 150 restaurants, Mimi's restaurant chain here in the United States, and obviously has done exceptionally well with that business and understands every finite detail on how to operate that business. And he always talked about having a menu that for that particular region that people want. Yep. For your customers, number one. Then having the staff and the chef that can prepare the menu so that the food is served in a manner that your customers are going to like it and want to come back. And then he talked about the other things of how to expand your locations. We see this happen with all of the franchises. They are identical in every location, because if they find the winning formula when they do the first or the second, the third, the fourth, then they duplicate that in the form of a matrix. And I wrote about that in the restaurant section.
Yep.
How they manage all of the small details that if they're not managed, they become, even though they're minor issues, minor becomes major when you have enough issues that are not being handled well. That becomes major.
Yep.
Serving food, hot food that's cold, for example, is what Tom Sims talked about. You never want to do that. You welcome people coming into your restaurant. You greet them warmly. You seat them quickly. You service them. You deliver hot food, hot, cold food, cold. You make the person feel welcome, and you serve a dish that's right for that particular region.
Mm-hmm.
So these are, I had, Troy, I had someone that read my book said, it's actually great. And I got a lot from it, but I think it's pretty, they said, I think it's pretty fundamental, isn't it? And I said, you're absolutely right. You got the point, because that's what it's about, is you get enough of the fundamentals right in a business, you have a high probability for success.
Yeah. So just back to Icon Blue, what year did you start out and how old were you?
I started Icon Blue in 2000,
Yep.
1998,
Mm-hmm.
to be exact. I transitioned another small business into Icon Blue in the same field, but I took on a partner. I took on a pension fund as a partner.
Right.
One of the largest pension funds with
Mm-hmm.
GE Asset Management, the
Yeah, they're
General
massive.
Electric Asset Management.
Yeah, huge.
They became a partner in the business, and so we changed the name to Icon Blue. And I was, that's 20 years ago. I guess I was 55 or so.
So you're now, I haven't had enough coffee today. It's 24 years ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, approximately.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you were at what age does that make you then?
55.
55. Yeah, great.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
about that. In my 50s, mid 50s.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's with that particular company. I had, other businesses before. My first company that I started I was 24 years old. And I first just came to Los Angeles, and it was a sales company. I had after my first 2 years here, I had started a business and where we sell product, and then we'd sell the contracts. We sell it on terms, 18 to 24 months, and then I would sell the contracts to various finance companies here in the city, and that was a very lucrative business. We had a hiccup in the economy about 6 years into that business, and the financing was no longer available, so that no one was buying contracts. So we had to transition, and I started doing motivational speaking for some time, and then about 3 or 4 years after, I kind of evolved to the promotions business.
Yep, great. And so when Icon Blue started in '98, how many full-time team members did you have then?
Well, when we started, we just had myself and one other person.
Yep.
Because when I started the company, I started in a partnership with another company, so that a lot of the staffing that I needed, that would do the deep dive, I kind of partnered with them on some of the services, and they provide the services. And then after about a year or so, we hired a couple of more people, and then we grew into about 15, a continuous staff of about 15 people. And in the promotional business, it's very difficult because the margins are not that high to make those businesses profitable. So there's two strategies you have to have for it. Either you become a $200 or $400 million company to really make a profit in it, or you stay small, be very, very efficient, operate with a low error rate. We have less than 0.5% error rate.
Wow.
And we're very, very profitable business.
Great. And so you sold about 3 years ago, and you had about 15 full-time?
Yeah, about 15 employees.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
I think it was, I never, if I look back on that, I probably would have difficulty determining when. because when you're busy doing and making things happen, I don't really think about, uh, didn't really think about that.
So there's no one moment that sticks out in your vast business career that you felt like I've succeeded?
Well, I think, Troy, I always felt like I was succeeding, but I always felt that I had a lot more to do. So
I think that's in our
I,
DNA, isn't it? As business owners and entrepreneurs, there's always the
yeah,
next project or business.
yeah, I never felt like, okay, I've arrived, you
Yep.
know.
Yep.
I felt good because when I got to a point that I was able to have more than what I needed,
Mm-hmm.
to live for my family, to support my family and my lifestyle. Um, I simply, I understood that I was doing well. I was thankful that I was doing well, but I never really analyzed it as I've arrived, because there's always a new horizon, as you know, in
Yep.
business.
Hmm.
And until I had pursued all of those, then I don't think I would have come to that conclusion. In the later years, when I knew that I was successful and my business got to a point where we would have, six-figure reserves and debt-free and a
Yep.
AAA credit rating.
That's a great
Well,
position to be in.
yeah, I knew we had that we were successful,
Yep.
but it wasn't something that I felt I have arrived and I
Mm-hmm.
don't need to go further. I've just never felt that.
What does success look like to you?
Balance.
Balance. Yep.
Yeah, balance. I also, I tried to write an honest book when I wrote Think Red Flags.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote about, and I told the story after telling people about red flagging. In my personal life, I had, at a very young age, I had failed to flag the
Mm-hmm.
fact that if you work all day and then late in the night, get up early in the morning, leave, go to work, and you have a family and you have a wife and a child, that's not my idea of success as I
Yep.
became more mature.
Yeah.
Because I lost that first family. By 25, I was divorced.
Yep.
And the money was great. I mean, I was a kid from Virginia, hadn't had any money, but all of a sudden we were making lots of it, and I was working all the time.
Yeah.
So balance, being able to recognize the importance, because it can be a very hurtful experience when you have to separate from a child. Even though my daughters, stayed part of my life even to this day, we're very close. But it's not a fun experience that I would wish on anyone. But it happens when you put all of your focus on your business,
Yep.
and very little. So I would say that balance is important in
Yeah.
life. Not forget to, hug the wife and the kid when you go home.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
That I would recommend to marketing a fast-growing business.
Yeah.
I think that it's important to develop a strong culture in your business, so that as you grow, your service ethic won't deteriorate.
Yep.
Because it's based on a strong platform. You find leaders in your company that buy into your vision, and you, in meetings and in staff meetings, you constantly reinforce, recognize, and individuals who do well, who
Yep.
practice the corporate culture well. And that was something that eventually led us to a point where, in my last 4 or 5 years of the business, I had a president of the company. I wasn't active in day-to-day operations, mostly in the handling of major accounts, and things of that nature. And it was very, very effective for us.
Great. And how did you fund your business or businesses over time, I guess?
Yeah, one of the things that we did is the questions that you're asking are good questions. They're all red flag questions.
Yep.
It's funding. It's these are the things that you have to think about in advance. You know, how do I get the capital? It has a lot to do with the type of business. If you're going into a retail business and it's all cash, that individuals are whatever they're purchasing from your service people, it's in cash. Then if like our business, we would give major corporations terms and 30-day terms. When you get 30-day terms and people pay you in 45 days, 45 to 50 days.
Yep.
And that's, you have to allow for that. So that means you're going to have more capital in order to be in that business. And what I was able to do was, because of the high efficiency early on in the business, that we made profit and didn't lose very much money, that I was able to accumulate the kind of reserves, capital reserves, that allowed us to, when we had a large order, I didn't have to borrow from a bank and pay, 5-6% interest on that money. That erodes the profit margin. And so whatever you obtain that business at, and didn't have to do that. We could finance it all ourselves. And we did that. And then we took on the partner,
Yep.
The pension fund. And that was obviously more than enough capital support for a small business.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Yeah, I think that's what we had to come to grips with, because we were so good at red flagging, was that there still are some things that we could not control. We could not control the manufacturer's execution of orders, even though we tried to help as much as we possibly could to help them get it right. We really didn't have control of that. And so sometimes it was quite frustrating to see the type of mistakes that they would make. And all we could do was learn. For example, we had this kind of mistake. This is not a manufacturing mistake. This was at a client's end, when we had an order going to a hotel in Florida for a big meeting that the client had. It was Olympic related. I was an Olympic licensee in 1984 for the Olympics here in Los Angeles.
Yep.
And there was a big meeting, and the customer had to have the goods at that hotel and at a certain time for a major meeting. Well, after that time, they would all disperse and go back to their countries, and so they didn't need it any longer. We turned it around quickly, used our process. We were efficient in getting the goods there. But when it got to the hotel, one of the employees didn't understand the urgency of it, took the goods, put it in a corner, and went home.
No.
and went home. And so everyone's running around, and I'm telling UPS they can't find the package. And they're saying, sorry, sir, there's nothing we can do. One of those things. And I was not happy. And when I offered, well, let's see if the president of UPS can help me. And they said, well, sir, there's nothing he can do. I said, no, but you're making my life miserable. So I'm going to call him and we're going to see what happens.
Yeah.
And anyway, they did manage to find the package, but they found the package too late. And it wasn't their fault. So needless to say, I had to apologize to UPS because it wasn't their fault. But it was quite disturbing because that culture that we developed in our business said, we always keep a promise. Whatever commitment you make to a customer, keep that commitment.
Yep.
And that not only applies to my business, Troy, but in the book, I wrote about different business. I interviewed the restaurant business, a real estate investor, a events planner, a marketing and PR owner, CEO, an information technology company CEO, and a construction CEO, a company that does maybe $200 or $300 million in revenue, and they were construction. And because I wanted the readers to be able to see exactly how red flagging applies, whatever the business may be, not just in my business, but the thinking where you can just relax your mind and develop a mindset to visualize processes going forward and what you might do to shore them up to make sure they function well, and how to if you do make a mistake, how to put a process in place so that you do not keep repeating the same mistake.
Yep. Right. Well, that might lead into the next question. What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
We were in a highly competitive business, working on a differentiator in our business. How do we distinguish ourselves from 25,000 other distributors who are out, who can offer the same products? So we developed an approach where instead of selling promotional products, we would sell ideas, business ideas. We would ask clients questions about what their objectives were, and then we'd offer solutions through the products that we sold. What message is it that you'd like to say to your customer? And then we would offer a solution. When they would tell us what that message was, we would offer solutions as to how they can meet that objective. Establishing that as a differentiator separated us from probably 90% of the companies in the industry.
Right. Great. What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
Making sure that the issue of sometimes fast growth can be not quality growth. Adding customers in the interest of growth and higher numbers that were not clients that were suited for your culture.
Yep.
That can easily happen. And so they put $1 million worth of business on the books 1 year, and they're so disruptive in the requirements that they have that you don't want them the second year. And so that million has to come off your books. That was always an issue in trying to grow with the right kind of clientele. And we were very fortunate in that regard. We had customers that we had for 18 to 20 years, and still, now that I've transitioned the business and the staff, those customers are still working with my previous staff.
Yep.
At the new company.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
The excitement of it. It's like, anything that you nurture from zero.
Yeah.
And then you're able to watch it take shape, and it takes form. It's invigorating. It's a very exciting thing to grow a business, and especially grow a business that's able to improve your lifestyle and allow you to be able to do things like share with others is very, very gratifying. And one of the things that I was talking to the young fellow that I've known for years. He was 26 when we met, and he's 50 now. And I've watched him go from buying his first 2-bedroom small home to now he probably has a net worth of over $50 million
Wow.
between the real estate and the 10 businesses that he owns. And I had asked him once, I said, what was the key element in your being able to develop? Because as you know, and as I would also emphasize, is that you can't do that by yourself.
No.
You have to have committed staff.
Mm.
And he was able to get people to work for him, and they would work for him for 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. He said, what do we do? And he said, respect. And it's something that I believed in. He and I stayed very close friends because we have the same philosophy about how people should be treated, and they stay with you. So when you see someone is staying in the same company, especially nowadays, because the trend is people flip every 5 years or so, it simply means it requires an interest in your employees, an interest in their children, an interest in when someone is getting married. I attended weddings. He attends weddings. And just a overall concerned about their well-being. I think that will help to keep staff and make it grow. And it's certainly supportive of the culture that you want to have in the company.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
The biggest mindset shift?
Yes. Yeah.
Mindset shift. I think that we had, I would have to go back. I think the biggest mindset shift that I had is when I started out in business. My first businesses was the type of businesses I was doing. I had a sales company originally at 24, had 30 salespeople. We'd sell products, we'd sell the contracts. These were consumer products, and we sell the contracts. I would to the finance companies, but that business was you were only as valuable as your last sale. You didn't create any equity. You didn't create relationships. It was a constant push to sell. Yep. You weren't relationship building. I think the biggest shift that I made was at 32 years old, when I decided to go into a business where you could build relationships with people, build rapport with corporations, and maintain and build on their business. So you weren't always every month starting from square one.
Yeah.
Those businesses can be lucrative, but it just requires a constant drive, and it's hard to build them to any substantial size if you're having to repeat everything every month.
Yeah. What is the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Well, I think one of the biggest habits is I'm a key believer that staff is that the people that you choose to work with, select them carefully. Find your leaders that really buy into your vision, and make sure you have a vision. Even if you're a small business, you can still have a vision for the business, and that vision needs to include some kind of benefit for your team. You're going to grow the locations. You're going to do another location. You're going to grow to a certain level where they can have a management position. Excuse me, where they're going to have a management position, or something in it for them. I think that's important.
Want to become the best manager you can be? Check out our Kick-Ass Manager course at growasmallbusiness.com. Do the course and add your fellow managers for no extra cost. Join the 30%. 70% of people quit their job because of their manager. Yeah, well, that feeds into the next question. If you can talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening, because you've had a vast and successful business career over many decades. So I'm sure you would have seen, learnt a lot more in around adding people to the team.
Yeah, referrals of competent people that some of my best team members came from referrals from team members that I thought highly of,
Yep.
people that were competent in my business.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, there's always some, as a matter of fact, and I think about it, most of them came from referrals,
Yeah.
internal
Right.
referrals
Yeah.
in the business. And when you go to networking events, industry networking events, you meet people and you make contacts with people. And that is an excellent way to identify people that are interested in your industry, and who maybe in many cases already have some experience in your industry. So you're not starting from square one in the training. I personally never objected to that because we had some very particular things that we'd like to do. We had a plan for recognition, was
Yep.
important. And it doesn't have to be costly. It can be very simple. We had, for example, we made statements, as everybody does. We made statements about how good our service was. Everybody does that. You're not going to have any corporation that tell you, we have great product, but our service is terrible. No
Yeah.
company has ever said that.
Yeah.
Okay. The question that I wanted to ask when I made those statements is I didn't want my mission statement to be just another business cliche, something that's clever to say. I wanted it to be real. I wanted it to be something that I felt strongly about. So I had to have a way, if I talked about great service, I had to have a way of measuring the type of service I was offering.
Mm-hmm.
So we created a true blue moment. Our company was Icon Blue. It was a true blue moment. And a true blue moment was when you serviced the customer so well that that person took the time to write an email that said, Allison, you rock.
Yep.
You did a fabulous job on this. I really appreciate your getting this done for me. When people take the time to do that,
It's huge.
it's huge. Because first of all, you're supposed to do that. So they don't have to say anything, so it's fine. Not everybody does. But when they feel that strongly about how well you've treated them and got the job done, it means you've gone the extra mile. It means you have stayed loyal to that statement that we make to people in our mission statement about the best service in the industry and about all of the things that we say. And do that. So we had True, and then we take a card and then we would print it on the wall in our company. We had an entire wall so that when people came in and customers came in, we had a True Blue wall, had all of these comments from customers, and everybody was very proud. And we always had a free lunch or something for people who had the most in a month. These are very low cost ways of recognizing people, showing them respect, treating them like you care about them as individuals. Goes a long ways.
What are some things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Well, the culture starts with a clear statement about who you want to be in your industry. How do you see yourself? And what is your differentiator in the business? And one of the things we did was we always wanted to make sure that we kept a promise. Our business was of delivering merchandise on time, producing and delivering merchandise within a certain time frame. And we wanted to be the most reputable company for being dependable and always doing that on time. And so that's where we put our focus, and that's where we put our interest, to make sure that all the team members understood that, and they were willing to execute those acts of service that allowed us to establish that reputation and maintain it. And that reputation is what perpetuated us as being so highly thought of, and as a matter of fact, in the entire industry.
Great. Yeah. You mentioned balance earlier on, so you weren't that good at it. Lost your first marriage. You obviously handling it a lot better in the latter part of your business career, right?
Yep.
Yep.
I did, and the one thing that I did do was I had 2 children when I divorced, and the thing that I was able to sort of bounce back to do was my position as a father. And I can say without any hesitation that I have never spoken to either of my daughters on the phone when we talk, and I didn't feel their love for me.
Yep.
And their love and their respect for their dad. So that let me know that the times that I spent with them, I had determined that because we weren't living in the same household, I wasn't going to spend as much time as a father would who was in the home, but I made sure it was quality time.
Yeah.
So that when they were with me, it was 100% them. We'd go to the market together, we'd shop together, we did things together, I'd cook for them, we'd have fun together, and so on. No television watching.
Yeah.
It was just us interacting.
Yeah.
And that paid off.
What about professional development and mentors and coaches over your decades of business experience?
Mentors, my business experience, absolutely. Some of my mentors were intentional mentors, and some of the mentors were people that I worked with and worked for that they may not call themselves my mentor, but I was learning from them.
Yeah.
I was learning by watching exactly what they did, and might not be defined as mentor, but I did have mentors too. And a lot of my mentors, I've been very fortunate in my career, Troy, that there have always been individuals who wanted to help me in my career. And I had, when I was an Olympic licensee in 1984, I was, obviously quite a bit younger then. And I had a mentor at the Coca-Cola company. His name was Walter Dunn. And they referred to him as the godfather of Coca-Cola. I mean, he was highly thought of. He ran a division called Image Dominance in the company.
Right.
Yeah. And pretty much, even though he wasn't the CEO, he pretty much had all the autonomy in doing everything, making all the decisions for that division. And he was just an incredible human being. And I've been fortunate enough over my career that I've had mentors like him who, for some reason, decided they wanted to support my business and help me. I walked into his office after 2 years of not being able to get the Olympic license because it was highly competitive when it was coming here. And he was talking on the phone. I never will forget it. He hangs the phone up and says, hello, Walter, guess what I just did for you? And I said, well, what's that? I just got you an Olympic license.
Wow.
After 2 years of my effort trying to get it, meeting with the mayor, meeting with the local politician, going through everything I could, it was done just like that.
Yeah.
And because they were a major sponsor of the Olympic Games, and it turned out to be, we produced a series of the first Olympic trading card series. And we did promotions with Coca-Cola and several other companies in that regard.
Before we get into our final 5 questions, you're one of the few guests we've had on that have actually exited a business. So you sold 3 years ago. Any advice for those listening, thinking about selling their business down the track or going through that at the moment?
Well, yeah, I think my first consideration, the business had done well by me. So my first consideration was my team, my staff.
Yep.
And these were people that, because I was considerably older than they, and they still have another 20, 25 years of work, life left. I wanted to make sure that first and foremost, they were in a place. So as a matter of fact, the better offer that I got for the company, for the clients and everything, was not the one I accepted.
Right. Yeah.
I accepted the offer that was
Going to look after the team.
that really looked out for the team.
Yeah.
And they are now top producers, they're managers with a company that is much, much larger than we were.
Yep.
And
Right.
I couldn't be happy about it. And it's not a question of, I think there is a responsibility to anyone who does well to make sure that you try to help others to do so as well.
Especially
as
those
many
people
as you possibly can. Yeah.
And
And
especially those that help you get there.
Absolutely. And that's why I wrote the book, Troy. That's why I wrote, Think Red Flags, because no one can read that book from start to finish and read the stories of the real estate investor, the restaurant owner, the construction owner, the event planner, the PR firm owner, the information technology owner, and not understand how to avoid problems that can be harmful to their business.
Yep.
You're always going to have problems. I had to preface it because there was a notice that came to my desk not too long ago, and it was from another podcast, and he made the statement, the only way that we can really learn is by making mistakes. Shouldn't we celebrate them instead of pretending that they didn't happen in the first place?
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, I believe that, it's a funny thing about truth. Something that's not exactly true, it has some truth in it. And that's a statement that has some truth in it. You can celebrate mistakes, but you don't have to make all the mistakes before you learn.
Yeah.
You can observe other people's mistakes and learn, right?
Yep.
Yeah. You can do case studies and learn. Okay. You don't have to make all the mistakes, because if you have to learn only from making mistakes, you're going to be very senior before you have the wisdom to succeed.
Yeah.
So I suggest that you use mentors, you use your personal experience and observations, and you use reading and education.
Yep.
So that you don't have to make every single mistake.
Definitely. All right, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Available capital is one thing. Having a product, having a differentiator, or not having a differentiator in your company, not being able to establish one, can make it very, very difficult. You always have staffing difficulties in the beginning of any business. Excuse me. Finding the right people that can buy into your vision sometimes takes a little time.
Yeah, I agree.
And being able to articulate the vision so that it motivates others can be difficult.
Yeah.
Establishing a customer base of clients that will serve your interests and your desire to grow your business. Some customers are just not good customers to have. They require a lot of attention. They don't want to pay your price.
Yep.
And you can burn a lot of time and resources, and it can stifle the growth in your business dealing with them.
Yep. Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
Gift of Fear, I think.
Yep. I haven't read that one. Do you know who the author is?
Gift of and I haven't read it. I haven't read it recently. It's Gary. I think it's Gary Bernison. I might be thinking about Lead, but
it's Gavin DeBecker, I think.
DeBecker.
Yeah.
Yes, that's who it is. He talks about the benefit of intuition became a part of my concept. The benefit of intuition and being able to use that intuition to guide your business. He gave an example in his book of you walk into a convenience store and you see a man standing there with a long coat. His hand is underneath the coat. He's standing at the counter. It's 90 degrees outside. Your intuition should give you a warning sign not to go to the counter, to retreat.
Mm.
You learn to listen to those intuitions and you avoid a lot of danger.
Yep.
That's what red flagging is supposed to be about.
Mm-hmm.
It's a caution, it's a warning, it's a beware alert that you should not retreat necessarily and don't go forward in your business venture, but go forward with the understanding that this particular issue, you need to address it.
Yep. Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
No,
Nope.
not really.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Yeah, well, that's the tool that's the primary tool I talk about is the red flagging, because it's like I said, Troy, it applies to life. It applies to your life as well. And a lot of different situations, evaluating a business as to whether or not you should go into the business.
Yep.
You ask a series of questions about it that if you can't answer them satisfactorily, my daughter was looking at an example. She was looking at a franchise business, and they had a territory, and they had to stay within that particular territory. And it was to service senior citizen facilities.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first question comes up, the first flag that comes up is the projection of revenue that I'm supposed to be able to generate from this territory. The next question would be, the flag would be, are there enough companies and senior citizen homes within that territory that I can generate the kind of revenue they're talking about?
Exactly.
So, and they'd be amazed. And she ended up passing on it because the answer was no.
Yeah.
There wasn't enough in there. But red flagging is raising the warning sign. If your business is dependent on a territory and you generating enough business out of that territory, then you have to make sure that there's enough potential business in there that you have to go up against competitors and others. See, these principles are very elementary, but anyone who practices enough of the elementary principles and applies them to a business, they dramatically increase their odds to succeed in that business.
Yep. Final and my favorite question, Walter, what would you tell yourself on day one of starting out in business, which I think from the math was late 60s was your first business? Is that right?
No. I had my first business at 24 years old. You recall I talked about that?
Yep.
We had the sales company and
so what, that late 70s, early 80s? Is that?
I'm sorry?
So yeah, what year was that first business?
Oh, that was 1970.
Yeah, great. Yep. So what would you go back to 1970, 3 years before I was born, and what would you tell yourself on day one of that, starting that first business?
What would I tell myself now? Since I did very well in that business, I don't think there's anything new that I would tell myself other than, there's only one thing, is that I wasn't aware of how the economy influenced a business where you have to sell something on terms and then factor the contracts to a factor.
Right.
I at the time I was young, it was doing well, and I felt like it would last forever.
Yep.
The economy changed. We had issues with the economy, and financing tightened. Capital was not as readily available, and the financing tightened. And not having the financing means the red flag element in that business, which you sell on terms, you got to have the capital from the contract, or you can't continue to finance your business. So that was a real hiccup in the business, and a great lesson.
Well, thanks very much for your time today, Walter. I think the audience get a lot of value out of what you've shared with us. Over 5 decades now in business. Congratulations, and thanks also for writing the book. We'll link through to it in the show notes as well. And I think it's an important topic for business owners to study more around.
Yeah, and the book is on Amazon, and you can get Think Red Flags: A Proactive and Profitable Approach for Your Small Business. And I encourage people to read the book, because these are nonprofit efforts for me at this point in my career.
Yep.
But the fact that we have 6 different very successful business owners speaking to people to tell them the how-tos, how they did it in their business, and specifics. It's not a boasting about their success. It's some detail on how they became successful. So there is a trail and a path that can help the readers.
Great. Fantastic. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome. You're so welcome. Thanks for having me on, Troy.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.